Welcome to the Pair Fair Podcast Show. Without further ado, here's your host Maria and George.
Welcome to the Pair Fair today. And today's story is entitled, We Should Learn from Our Past. We should learn from our past. Interesting story. Kind of get you thinking about how people perceive you. People look at you a different way. Your body language. I like the story that has it's about this body language, but we'll get more into that in a minute. Some things that the main character did in the story. But let's sit back, listen to our story, follow along, enjoy it, and we'll see in a few seconds.
She rarely makes eye contact. Instead, she looks down at the ground. Because the ground is safer. Because unlike people, it expects nothing in return. She doesn't have to feel ashamed about her past. The ground just accepts her for who she is right now. As she sits at the bar next to me, she stares down at her vodka tonic, and then the ground, and then her vodka tonic. Most people don't get me, she says. They ask me questions like, "What's your problem?" Or "Were you beaten as a child?" But I never respond. Because I don't feel like explaining myself. And I don't think they really care anyway. Just then, a young man sits down at the bar on the opposite side of her. He's a little drunk, and says, "You're pretty. May I buy you a drink?" She stays silent and looks back down at the ground. After an awkward moment, he accepts the rejection, gets up, and walks away. "Would you prefer that I leave too?" I ask. "No," she says without glancing upward. "But I could use some fresh air." "You don't have to come, but you can if you want to." I follow her outside and we sit on a street curb in front of the bar. It's a really chilly night. "Tell me about it," she says while maintaining her usual downward gaze. The warm vapor from her breath cuts through the cold air and bounces off of the ground in front of her. "So why are you out here with me? I mean, wouldn't you rather be inside in the warmth, talking to normal people about normal things?" "I'm out here because I want to be. Because I'm not normal. And look, I can see my breath, and we're in San Diego. That's not normal either. Oh, and you're wearing Airwalk sneakers, and so am I, which may have been normal in 1994, but not anymore." She glances up at me and smirks, this time exhaling her breath upward into the moonlight. "I see you're wearing a ring. You're married, right?" "Yeah," I reply. "My wife, Angel, is just getting off work now and heading here to meet me for dinner." She nods her head and then looks back at the ground. "Well, you're off the market. And safe, I guess. So can I tell you a story?" I'm listening. As she speaks, her emotional gaze shifts from the ground, to my eyes, to the moonlit sky, to the ground, and back to my eyes again. This rotation continues in a loop for the duration of her story. And every time her eyes meet mine, she holds them there for a few seconds longer than she did on the previous rotation. I don't interject once. I listen to every word. And I assimilate the raw emotion present in the tone of her voice and in the depth of her eyes. When she finishes, she says, "Well, now you know my story. You think I'm a freak, don't you?" "Place your right hand on your chest," I tell her. She does. "Do you feel something?" I ask. "Yeah, I feel my heart beat." "Now close your eyes, place both your hands on your face, and move them around slowly." She does. "What do you feel now?" I ask. "Well, I feel my eyes, my nose, my mouth. I feel my face." "That's right," I reply. "But unlike you, stories don't have heartbeats. And they don't have faces. Because stories are not alive, they're not people. They're just stories." She stares into my eyes for a prolonged moment, smiles sincerely and says, "Just stories we live through. Yeah? And stories we learn from."
Welcome back from the story. And as we entitled the story, we should learn from our past. A couple things as I look at this story, and I just read this story and heard this story. In the last few days, I've been wrestling around with this story, just looking at this story, and I look at how we are as people, how people perceive us from a distance, not even because we open our mouths or anything, but how people look at us and how we carry ourselves. And as I looked at our main character in our story, they said one thing that she did was she avoided eye contact with people. She avoided all eye contact with people because she really didn't want people to look at her. She didn't want people to look at her. She looked at the ground because she knew the ground wanted nothing in return. And I heard that before, that people who have their heads down, they really don't want to really have any eye contact because they feel bad about themselves, or they're trying to avoid eye contact. And then you have the other person who has their head up and they're excited. You can tell they're excited about life. They're confident about their day. They're confident about whatever they're doing. And they have their head up. And usually the people who have their heads down, they're frowning. The people who have their heads up and looking forward to life, they're pretty excited and they're smiling. And so as I look and I think about how they set the story up, and it's in a bar. And usually what bar is, the girl probably, she went up to the bar and she sat there, and usually guys, girls, it doesn't matter. The person who's sitting by themselves, they see that the person they kind of figure out what they're drinking. She's drinking a vodka tonic. And she's like, okay, well, people who are drinking vodka, I don't know if it was the middle of the day, right after work, whatever. They say must be going through something. It's pretty strong, strong enough. So they knew she had something on her mind. She knew she had something on her mind. But she wouldn't have had I think a lot of times as people, we wouldn't have a perception that we want people to think that there's something wrong with me. There's something what happened to me. And they talked about, people kept questioning her, like, well, did something happen to you when you were a child? Did something happen to you when you were an adult? Did you get beat and all this other stuff? Because a lot of times we carry around these emotional scars. And as I look at this story, she said a lot of things happened to her. A lot of things happened to her. And you kind of can tell, and I've heard this over and over again, how you perceive yourself. It's kind of like telling your story of your life. And as you drag around, you don't feel good about yourself. It kind of tells people a lot about you. So as I listened to the story more and more, this one person approached her. He said, hey, you're pretty. Gave her a compliment. She never looked, kind of like shrugged him off and just like, whatever, and didn't really want to deal with a positive comment. She wanted to sit there and talk about all the things that happened to her. Some people are like that. They want to sit there and just feel bad about themselves and look different. But the guy, the minor character in the story, he said, oh, we do have something in common, because she kept thinking that she's different from everyone else. He says, we're out here. We kind of wear the same shoes. They're not in style anymore. People look at us different. I'm out here. I can see my breath. We're in sunny San Diego. So we are different. I want to be out here because I want to be out here. I want to talk. I want to hear what you have to talk about. She said, well, you're married. He said, oh, yeah, I'm married. My wife will be here any minute. But he wanted to hear her story. But I realized, and there's some things that confuse me, is why do people want that kind of attention? And what I mean attention, and it's okay to be different. It's okay to think differently, and it's being creative and all this stuff. I understand that. But it's one thing being creative and positive, and there's another thing being creative and negative. And I'd rather have a creative, positive person who's excited about their creativity than when someone who's negative. And because what happens is, as I look at the story, and that person who has their head down and they have low self-esteem, and maybe earlier in their life, they were excited about life. And they eventually, things happened to them. And then they kept their smile turned into a frown over and over again. Because a lot of times in life, we do carry around our stories. And that's what happens a lot. It was just confusing to me, is as we don't think we carry around things that happen to us, but we do. We carry around in every little story that comes around to us. And as I look at how some people carry this stuff around with them and they keep dragging around, I heard this saying a long time ago. I think I may have mentioned it before in another podcast. This guy was walking through life, or whatever, how you want to say it. He was walking through life and he had two bags. He had two bags that he carried around. So anything that good happened to him, he put it in that bag. Anything bad happened to him, he put it in another bag. Eventually, I guess the bags got so heavy with all the negative things that happened to him. He really didn't have that much good things going for him in his good bag. So he had to figure out, he had to lighten his load. And so, he stopped and he said, what can I do? He said, I'm kind of tired of carrying around all this negative baggage with me. So what he did was, at the end of that bag, he just cut a big old hole in it. He cut a hole in it. And he said, hey, I got to let this stuff go. I can't carry this stuff around the rest of my life. And so eventually, all the good stuff that was in his bags, it was leading him forward. It was pushing him forward. He had something to look forward to. He wasn't always worried about all the bad things that happened to him, because if it happened to him, he shook it off and kept moving. But a lot of times we want to carry around our baggage. And in our story, she wanted to carry around and she wanted to tell people her story, how bad things were, how things happened to her, how this and that, woo, 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 and all this other stuff. Because a lot of people like to talk about the problems they had. They don't really want to talk about the solution or where they're going. There's, because we always want to sit down and like we talked about this before, and I talked to myself about that. There's always someone who wants to listen to someone who's down and out. Down and out, they don't feel good about themselves because they have a story. They want to just keep going. And it's kind of like that fire that we have. As soon as we're out ready to put that fire out, we just add some more wood to that negative situation and we keep it going. Because our attitudes need to change. Our attitude needs to change. And things happen to me all the time. I have to say this. I have to let stuff go. There's some things that happened to me the last couple of days. And I can either carry that stuff around with me or I have to let it go. And it was very hateful what some people said to me. And it's 3 days later and I still have it lingering around with me. And I think back to myself and say, well, you're the same way. You're going to carry this stuff around with you too, because it did affect my mood. It affected how I was that day. And I told myself, regroup. I said, don't take it out on people who you don't even know. So as we go through life, everyone in here has a story. But a lot of times we want to hear the positive story. We want to hear the positive things, because sometimes all we want to do is focus on the negative things that happen to us. And I think the more negative things that happen, the more attention we bring to it. Because we always know that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets all the attention and whatnot. And it's true. The person who makes all the noise and squeaking along and doing all this other stuff, we tend to listen to. The person who's excited about life, has a plan, good things are happening to them, we kind of like, well, why? Well, you don't have to be all happy about it. What's your problem? But we have to be excited about life. You have to be more, your self-esteem has to be higher. Your attitude has to change. As I was coming in today, someone mentioned that, check your attitude. Check your attitude. If your attitude is poor, you're going to have a poor life. And you got to constantly check that attitude, because sometimes that attitude, it's like a gas gauge. It does get low. Your attitude will get low and you will start feeling bad, because people don't want you to feel good about yourself. People don't want you to be happy about life. People want you to be looking down at the ground, because the ground, like you said, the ground owes you nothing. But if you look up at all the sky, you look at all the wonderful things that are happening. And I really believe that we can learn from our story. And it's okay to carry these stories around. It's okay to carry these stories around with you if you're using them in the right way. If you're using these stories in the right way, because I see a lot of times people are carrying these stories around like crutches. They're carrying them around. They're like little crutches, and they go, oh, why aren't you doing this? Well, this and this happened to me, and I would be doing this and I would be doing that, but I can't. Instead of turning around as a motivation and say, okay, this happened to me, that happened to me, this happened to me, but I'm still going to make it to my goal. Because I looked at some things this morning, And I said, you just keep pushing. It's working. Your strategy is working. You just keep pushing. It hurts. The strategy hurts because anytime you go on a diet or you're on a budget or whatever, it's going to hurt because it's good for you. If it's not good for you, it's, if you're just out there spending money and you're eating whatever you want to eat, eventually your health is going to decline. Your credit score is going to decline, whatever is going to decline. But if it's painful and it hurts, and every time you look in your bank account and it's going down, but you're paying your bills, you're paying your credit card, you're paying your mortgage, you're doing the right thing. So we have to learn. We have to learn from our mistakes. You have to learn from them, and you have to keep in not just your mistakes, but sometimes you learn from other people's mistakes. Because sometimes we think that we can't learn from people. And just me listening to that story and reading that story, I have to really watch myself today and how I carry myself and how my attitude comes across to people. Because if my attitude is not good and I have my head down looking at the ground because the ground owes me nothing, people are like, well, I thought he had it all together. He's happy one day, next day he's sad. And you can't act like that. You can't be like that. You got to stay positive in whatever you do. And I know it's hard to say that, and it's easy to sit back and say, you got to stay positive and all these things are happening to you at once. And we got to constantly, myself, all the negative things that happen to me, all the comments, people saying this, people saying that, things happen to me. I have to say, okay, it's happening. What am I going to do with it? It's happening. Am I going to just sit around and join in and pile on and carry that stuff around with me? I'm going to carry it around with me, but I'm going to use it as my motivation. I'm going to use it as, okay, it's time for me to show you that whatever is happening to me at this time, I'm going to overcome it. Because no one, we have all these people who are going through stuff, but there's so many people who are overcoming things. I see so many negative news reports every day. And every now and then I see a positive report that inspires me that, okay, let's keep moving. Because if you watch the news, there's probably the ratio is like 4 to 1, 4 negatives to 1 positive story. But you got to keep thinking that one positive thing. If nothing happens to you today but one positive thing, hold on to it. Because like I said, the negative will always try to outweigh you. The negative will always try to dominate the situation. The negative will always try to dominate the conversation because it wants your attention. It's going to speak the loudest. It's going to act the loudest. But you have to understand that you control your situation. And I like what he said about at the end. He says your stories don't have a heartbeat. Your stories don't have a heartbeat. You have the heartbeat. Stop giving life to these stories, because your stories are just stories. But if you keep breathing life into these stories, it's going to continue to fester around you. So your stories don't have a nose. They don't have ears. They don't have a mouth. They don't have a heart. They don't have a heartbeat. They're just stories. But if we constantly look at this stuff and we think that we're different, we're freaks and we're this and we're that, and we're not. We all think that we're somehow weird and whatnot. You're just trying to get through the day. And all this not feeling good about yourself and telling yourself that, oh, I had a rough life and this and this. There's other people who had a rougher life than that. And I was listening to the radio yesterday as I was heading out. They're talking about talking about this basketball draft or whatever, how they talk to some of these players here in the United States and they think they're the best ones. And he says, wait a minute, you need to really look at yourself. You're not just the best one. You maybe think you're the best ones in the United States, but they're the world. We're talking about the world now. You're just competing. You're thinking about just the United States, but we have all these people in all around the world who are getting better at playing basketball and being a more complete player. And that's how you have to look at yourself. Don't just look at one little area that you want to work on, one little incident that you're comparing yourself. Well, I'm better off than these people over here. Think about all the other people that you want to be great around. Think about how you have to lift that head up today, because as we go through life, there's going to be people that's going to constantly want you to put your chin in your chest and make you feel bad about yourself. People do that to me all the time. Happened to me yesterday. And I said, okay, whatever. That makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy about yourself. You do yourself. But I'm not gonna fall for that bait. I'm not gonna go out like that. I'm not gonna be sitting there with a gin and tonic in my hand, head down, feeling bad, thinking that life is hard. It is hard. It's hard, but I'm gonna go out swinging. I'm gonna go out hustling and doing what I have to do for my family and doing for my relatives. But I'm not gonna be worried about, oh, life is so hard and you don't understand me, but you have everything in the world. Because one thing I don't like is I hate a lack of effort. I see people all the time have so much potential, and I see myself with so much potential. I'm not worried. As I see people, I can't worry about them. They got to make their own decisions. I need to worry about myself and the potential that I see. And I have to get all the potential I can out of me. But I can't sit around and feel sorry for myself because this and this didn't happen. This and that didn't happen. Got to keep pushing yourself. And that's what happens. We stop pushing ourselves. We start thinking that, I can't learn. All these bad things are happening to me. When is it ever going to stop? It's going to stop when you want it to stop. It's going to stop when your attitude changes. If your attitude changes to a better way, it's going to be all right. And you got to stop looking at things as a negative. Positive always wins. It may be slower. It may not get the results that you want right now, but eventually it'll get there. It'll get there. But you got to stay with it. I have to stay with it. Well, once again, I want to thank you for dropping by the Parafair podcast, and hopefully you were enlightened by the stories that we learned things from. Interesting story. As we talk about self-esteem and attitudes in the next couple podcasts, we just have to remember that we control the situation. And it's just like anything that you go through in life. As you walk into the room, you either have a choice of turning on the light or turning off the light. So as you go, hopefully the podcast has helped you make you a better person. And we will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Love this episode of the Parafair podcast? Head over to SoundCloud to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.